Welcome to the All Utah Hockey Podcast, our first post-game edition. I'm Petey, and hopefully we got our fingers crossed that we'll be joined later in the show by Craig Morgan, who is on the ground at the Delta Center right now outside the locker room trying to get in for post-game interviews. And since it's a new building, a new procedure, and there's a lot going on inside Delta Center right now, we don't know when Craig is going to show up. So, for those of you that are jumping over from the old PHNX hockey postgame shows, as you notice, Leah's not here. This is all me. My back's going to get sore. I have to carry the show until Craig shows up. What a win for the All Utah Hockey Club in their inaugural game at home. I tell you what, the excitement around this whole entire day in Utah, you saw it outside the building, you saw it in the introductions. The building was buzzing from the beginning. You couldn't hear on the bench. Just an incredible atmosphere inside the Delta Center. And I tell you what, the Utah Hockey Club came out buzzing. And they came out buzzing in the first period. Luckily, they survived some lulls in the defensive zone in the second and third period to come out with a 5-2 win. Huge night in Utah. It's important for this franchise, I think, one, to get off on that kind of a start and get a big win. And I'm sorry to our neighbors at the CHGO Blackhawks show. They got the right opponent at the right time. Chicago's going to be a better club as this season wears on. But I think Utah was lucky they caught Chicago early in the year because I think they were the better team for most of this game. However, and this is something, as you continue to listen to me and find your way to the All Utah Hockey Podcast, I get a little frustrated with defensive zone coverage. And I'll tell you why. I used to be a member of the coaching staff for the Arizona Coyotes for over 20 years. And I worked under some coaching staffs that were really defensive minded. I worked under Dave Tippett. I worked under Rick Tocchet, and defending is important. You saw it in this game again tonight. They almost gave this one away in the defensive zone. Offensively, this team is going to be exciting. I tell you what, these young players, Cooley, phenomenal. Dylan Guenther, as advertised. It's amazing how much they have grown over that year. And you talk about Josh Doan, and I know Josh Doan didn't jump off the page like he does, offensively like he did with Cooley and Guenther, but Doner just does things right. So there's a lot to be excited about with this Utah Hockey Club. But I think today the big win was for the city of Utah and for the Smith Entertainment Group. And I say that because I've been around this franchise for a very long time, and I could tell you it's different today. It's different for the players. It's different for the staff. It's different for the fans because this ownership understands it. They get it, and they give the fans and the players what they want. There was a great product. What a game tonight. And Utah fans should be proud of the team that they have in front of them. That was a lot of fun tonight in Utah. Huge win. A lot of great individual performances tonight. And I tell you what, some people jumping in the chat already. I know Joel, who's jumped over, a good friend of the show. Joel's past my bedtime. Another thing you'll find out, especially if there are new people to the show, I'm an old grumpy man. And when we say it's past my bedtime, it is past my bedtime. It is 11 o'clock in Utah right now. That's late. Buddy, that's late. But there's a lot of energy in here. There's a lot of energy in the chat. And so there's going to be a lot to talk about in tonight's game. So let's go through. First, let's get a look at the numbers of tonight's game. And by the numbers, shots, I tell you what, this is one of the things that this franchise struggled with a year ago, is getting outshot early and late in games. And I tell you what, they started off on fire 7-3 in the first period, ended up being outshot by just a single shot, but they have to be able to find a way to sustain that kind of pressure they had in the first period, and they got to sustain it for 3 periods. Power plays, nobody gets a power play goal tonight on either side. Utah 0 for 2 on the power play. Chicago 0 for 3. And I tell you what, Chicago, oh boy, they struggled on the power play. This is a team that is not deep enough to field 2 full power play units. They're going to have some trouble. Their first unit, very good. Not surprising the way special teams turn out this way. Special teams are very difficult early in a season. They're hard. You don't get to practice them as much. Guys don't have that chemistry that you're used to as the season goes on. And you got to look at both of these teams. These are power plays that are there's a lot of new moving pieces in these power plays. Even for Utah, you look at Barrett Hayton, who missed a lot of the end of last season. It's going to take these teams time to get into that in their special team stride. It takes time. It's one of the things that comes the latest in your system play for a hockey team. Hits, it's a physical game. There were some big hits both ways, and I tell you what, every time Liam O'Brien stepped on the ice, you got that chill through the arena. They're like, oh my goodness, what is he going to do? And by the way, Liam O'Brien had scoring opportunities a couple of times during this game. Can you imagine if Liam O'Brien scores in opening night in the Delta Center? Literally, the roof might have blown off the place. And that's the kind of excitement that Liam O'Brien can bring. However, Liam O'Brien can take penalties. And that's one thing this team has to watch out for. And I think part of it was the evening and the night that the emotions were running high. And you look at the way Clayton Keller finished off in that third period with back-to-back penalties as the team captain. Okay, from the coaching perspective, can't do that. You can't take those penalties in a 1-goal game at that time. You just can't. On the other side of it, you're captain of the team playing in your first game in your first home building. You're playing with a lot of emotion, and you're out there to show your team that you're going to battle and play hard for them. And I think that's what Clayton Keller went out to do. It was impressive. And Clayton Keller is a guy that we talked about as a captain for this franchise for years, and finally he gets the opportunity to wear the C, and he didn't disappoint. Clayton Keller's a guy that did play both sides of the puck extremely well. He works incredibly hard, and when Clayton Keller plays like that with a little bit of jam, a little bit of, hey, that I'm going to get you attitude, man, he is a dangerous hockey player. And that line, I thought, in the offensive zone, when Barrett Hayton, Nick Schmaltz, and Clayton Keller in the offensive zone from the blue line end, that line looked as they have for years. Barrett Hayton looked better than he has in a long time. And I know Barrett Hayton finished last season with an injury, but he comes into this season with a lot to prove. He's a guy that has struggled with injuries. He's been inconsistent. He hasn't put up the numbers that he has, in a top 5 draft pick that you expect him to put up. I thought he was very good today getting to the net. I thought he was good at distributing the puck, and I thought he looked quicker today than he has in previous years. So let's go through the scoring rundown tonight. Dylan Guenther opens the scoring. We're going to talk about Dylan Guenther's opening goal later. Dylan Guenther, my goodness, how many shots did he take? He's a threat to score from the top of the circle in from all over the ice. Dylan Guenther is for real. And I tell you what, the step he took from last season to this season is very noticeable. He's a guy that didn't start the season last year on the Arizona Coyotes Hockey Club. They sent him to the minors, and I think from there, he said, okay, I better get to work. And tonight, drop of the puck, he came to work. And he is going to be one of the most exciting offensive players for this Utah Hockey Club for this entire season. He's a guy to watch when the puck is inside that blue line. He opens the scoring. Great play by Kesselring. And Logan Cooley really makes that play. And we're going to break that one down a little bit later on the show. Keller gets the second goal halfway through the first period, assist by Schmaltz and Hayton. And that's where we talk about that chemistry coming. And I think that line, again, I liked those two lines a lot. I thought McBain brought some toughness to the Guenther Cooley line. And I think the Keller Schmaltz Hayton line have played together for so long that chemistry just continues to grow. Then Barrett Hayton on a tip shot in the second period, halfway through the second, again, driving the net, just like we talked about. Schmaltz gets his second assist of the season. And it's funny because I'm hard on Nick Schmaltz. I am. I talk about a player that isn't always consistently giving it every shift on the ice, but today he did. And he's a guy quietly gets 2 assists through a period and a half. And I think he is going to be a guy that needs to play at his best, and he's got to stay healthy. Something else that Nick Schmaltz hasn't been able to do. But I tell you what, this team couldn't hold on. And Chicago finally started to show glimpses of what I think they're expecting to have. Teuvo Teravainen comes in with a goal. Great assist by Connor Bedard. Nick Foligno makes it 3-2 in the third period. Like, this started to get a little bit tight in the third period. And I think that that's where you looked at the excitement from the day starting to wear off on this Utah Hockey Club. I think that their energy was high all day long, all day. For weeks, their energy has been high, and you start to burn out. Like, you burned all that energy out. So you could see the tiredness starting to slip into the game. And another thing I think you saw in their game in the third period was some of that confusion in the defensive zone. And what happens when you have this many players, especially 3 defensemen to your lineup, and you had that many forwards that didn't play in last year's system under Andre Tourigny, you see confusion and you see guys pointing. So when you're sitting in the stands or you're watching the game on TV at home and you see somebody in the defensive zone go like this or like that, not a great sign. And I think that that's going to start to take some time for this group to get comfortable in Andre Tourigny's system. There's a big change for those defensemen coming from different teams, understanding where you're supposed to be. It has to be second nature in the defensive zone. You have to know who you're covering. You have to know where you're supposed to go. Otherwise, you end up with holes in the defensive zone like you did tonight. And if not for Connor Ingram playing an outstanding game, this game could have easily turned out different. And it's surprising with the start that Utah had against Chicago. They were so quick. This team played so fast and so high skilled. You thought this was going to be a lopsided victory. The scoreboard shows it's a 5-2 win, but this is 3-2 right up to the very, very end. And I think as Utah continues to grow and play together and get through these opening night jitters, I think you're going to see a team that's going to settle down. I think you're going to see a team that's going to learn to play together. And as they're hitting the road now, I think it's going to give them a really good opportunity to get some of that bonding in and get some of that togetherness that you can only find when you're playing on the road. So I wanted to get some of the comments because we don't know where Craig is. And I apologize for that. I'm not apologizing. Craig's busy getting interviews and trying to provide content for the show. And this, I'll admit, first time I've had to carry the show by myself in history. So be patient with me because we're going to get to some more stuff. I'm going to try to teach you some hockey because that's what I do best. And I right now I give a shout out to my old partner, Leah Merrill, who usually drove the bus for the post-game shows. Leah, I understand how hard your job is. So I'm about ready to teach some hockey. One of the things I do in the coach's room is you get to break down a lot of game film and you get to watch a lot of guys making mistakes. And on this show, a lot of times I want to teach you some things where guys screwed up or maybe could have done something a little better or what to look for when you're watching the game. Well, today, after a big 5-2 win by that Utah Hockey Club, we're going to try to show you something positive and something to look for when you're watching a hockey game. And we're going to break down the first goal in Utah Hockey Club history. And I want to show you a few things. Before we start this, we can't actually show video. Sorry, it's called copyright laws. So there's going to be a lot of still pictures, and you're going to try to imagine what's going on the ice at this time. This all starts with a control breakout from behind the plate. And the most important thing to start this play is Logan Cooley. And Logan Cooley brings skill and speed to this team, and he brings his speed through the middle of the ice. And as the play goes up the ice, because of that speed, he's able to draw attention from the Chicago checker in the neutral zone, which leaves Kesselring to the outside, makes a great pass to Kesselring all alone on the wide lane. Kesselring now coming with full speed as he hits the blue line. Cooley drives the middle of the lane. When you drive the middle lane, you pull back the defenders of the opponent. When you pull back the defenders of the opponent, you give all kinds of room for Dylan Guenther in behind. That's what opened all this space for Dylan Guenther. If you give Dylan Guenther this much room, Dylan Guenther is going to score because his shot is elite from that area of the ice. So the learning point of that is driving the middle lane. So as you see Cooley hit the blue line, he drives the middle lane, which pulls the Chicago defenseman back with him, which leaves all kinds of open room for Dylan Guenther in behind. And I think that's one of the things that makes Logan Cooley such a special player. He not only has the hands and he's got the vision, but he understands the game and he's got a very high hockey IQ. He is going to score goals. The kid's going to score goals in this league. He's going to get a lot of goals for this Utah Hockey Club, but he's also going to make the players around him better. One thing you saw from him last year is he was a little bit lighter. And I think those first few games a season ago, you go, oh, like this is big boys now. And I think it took Logan Cooley a while to find his game. You see how he played with Dylan Guenther tonight. I think Utah fans need to be excited about what those two as a tandem can bring. And I said this before, and people really got upset with me. But I said this a year ago, that those two, by the way, Shelby, you have no idea how much we miss Leah. But those two, to me, at their point in the career right now, they remind me of a young Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane for the Chicago Blackhawks. And I know that's overstating, and I don't want to set that high of a bar for these guys just coming into the league. But I'd say that because I see Patrick Kane as Logan Cooley, the flash, the dash, the skill, the guy that's going to make those plays that go, oh my goodness, how did he make that play? And Dylan Guenther's going to be more of the quiet leader that just gets the job done, plays a 200-foot game, and helps carry his team on. He's a guy that I predict somewhere down the future wearing a letter for this team. Absolutely. So when I see those two guys on the same line, it gives me glimpses into the future of what this team can be. Now, McBain was great on the left wing. I do think lines are going to change when Nick Bukestad comes back into the lineup, because they're going to have too many abundance of forwards, and they're going to have to make some changes in that lineup. And I'm wondering who is going to be the permanent winger on that side with those two. For now, it's McBain, because I think he helps create some space. I think he's a big physical winger that can get the puck to those two guys. And I do think he can make a difference, especially when Logan Cooley gets people upset. He's a guy that plays with the edge. He's going to get his stick into people. He's going to push people into the boards, and people are going to want to push back on Logan Cooley. And so you want to have a player like Jack McBain there. We'll have to see as the season progresses how these lines continue to grow and where they all end up slotting in. And excuse me. So now we see the great goal that's scored by Dylan Guenther. And this part is hard because we want to talk about all the great individual performances and who was all great during the game. And there were so many of them tonight. We talked about Nick Schmaltz with his 2 assists, Barrett Hayton, a goal and assist on a great tip driving the net, Lawson Krause with a goal at the end, another great tip driving the net, Cooley with 2 assists. But for the very first Utah Hockey Club player of the game, for their inaugural game of the entire franchise, is Dylan Guenther. Dylan Guenther ends the game with 2 goals. He gets the empty netter off the boards from Logan Cooley and the first goal in franchise history, and his 5 shots. I will tell you this. His 5 shots literally could have scored on any of those 5. This kid can fire the puck. He led all... Oh, I almost said the C word, but I didn't. He led all Utah Hockey Club members with 5 shots on goal. The only other player on the ice with 5 shots on goal, Connor Bedard. So great company for Dylan Guenther. By the way, Connor Bedard trying the lacrosse-style goal from behind the net. The Michigan, yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. Me and John Tortorella, not a fan of the Michigan. I know the crowd would have went wild, but having said that, the other thing I want to say about this Utah Hockey Club in their first game in their franchise history, something that this franchise didn't see a lot of last season, and that's every player is even or plus in a plus-minus. There's nobody that struggled and gave up all of those goals and was on the ice to get those minuses. And it's something that this team, if they're going to even tease the P word, if this team going to tease the playoffs, they are going to have to defend, and they're going to have to defend better than they did tonight. And one of those players that I thought needs to play a little bit better defensively is Mikhail Sergachev. And he's a guy, again, where he's coming from a different system. He's coming from a team with a much different defensive zone structure. He's coming from a team that has a pedigree of winning. He's coming from a team that had Victor Hedman alongside of him for year after year after year. But when you look at the game tonight, I think Mikhail Sergachev is clearly got some room to grow in how he defends for this team. And the first goal of the game, where he stands up at the red line against Connor Bedard and literally gets caught standing still as Bedard blows by him. That's a play he can't make. He has to be able to address. It's a 3-on-2 coming back at him. He's got to back up into the zone and address it like a 3-on-2. Instead, he stands up at the blue line, and unfortunately, he gets beat on the wide side, which ends up leading to the goal. And I think there were a few times in the defensive zone too, I really saw him. We talked about that pointing, that confused look by Mikhail Sergachev, and not sure where he should be on the ice. And I think that will continue to grow. Again, it's a system change that he has played year after year after year, and this is the first time in a full game action where you're not in a classroom. You think, you react, and that's what happens. It's instinctual, and that's what this team has to get to be in the defensive zone. It has to be second nature. They have to know exactly where to go, and they looked lost in the defensive zone tonight. But this isn't about how they defended. This is about how they came out and played for this Utah fan base, and how they played from the blue line in, and how exciting this team can be offensively. And I don't know if people were listening to the ESPN broadcast, you got to see Ray Ferraro and AJ Malesko talk about how good this team is. Even in the intermission, PK Subban and Mark Messier are saying this is a really good hockey club. And I think people are going to recognize that as this season goes on, that this is a team that can play incredibly fast, incredibly skilled, and they do not give you room to get out of your zone. Once they clean up some things in the defensive zone, this is a very, very good hockey team. And I think one of the luxuries of the Utah fan base in an expansion era, getting a team like this that's already established and already has an identity, man, that's exciting. And you really hit the ground running. And I will say this to the fan base at Utah tonight. They showed up. And they showed up before the game. They were on the red carpet. They were there hours before the game. There was a group and contingent outside the stadium watching this on TV. This community is excited about hockey. And I think you could tell by the way the players responded. And I will say again, I want to give a just special note to Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith made the difference, and he made the difference to this team. He made the difference to the staff, the wives, the kids, because he showed what it means to be an NHL owner. And I think that was the difference that was always lacking in this franchise, that now they finally feel that they have a home. And the other thing, I don't know if you saw in the opening video that they played inside the building as they passed the puck around from youth hockey rinks and through the city of Salt Lake into different communities in the Utah greater Salt Lake area. You saw government officials getting involved, politicians coming together with the community, with the hockey group, everybody on the same team. And that makes this work. So hats off to Utah and everything that they did to get this team there, and what they have done to embrace a hockey team and make these guys feel welcome at home, because it is going to make a difference on how they play. Well, I'm just trying to read the chat too. This is hard because I don't see incredibly well. We talked about my age, but I'm trying to get to some of the chats too. I'm sorry. When Karen said it'll be interesting to see how they are against a better team, I agree, Karen. And I think that one of the things that we talked about with Chicago, this is a team that's still finding their way. Chicago's better than they were a year ago, but this isn't a very good hockey team yet. Sorry, Chicago fans, they're not there yet. They're coming. But I watched the Florida Panther game earlier today. The Florida Panthers have a really good hockey team. Boston Bruins have a good team. There are some very good teams, especially in the Central Division where the Utah Hockey Club is playing. The Dallas Stars are an incredibly good hockey team. St. Louis is coming back and trying to get back underneath where they were a few years ago with Colorado Avalanche. This Utah team's going to have to play very good teams. But one thing you've seen from this franchise in their old version in Arizona is they played up to their competition. They played better against better teams. This is a team that had winning records against the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche the year they won the Stanley Cup. So this is a team that knows how to play to that level. But I don't think you can be a playoff team, and I don't think you can be a championship team until you defend better. And that's going to come. So I'm going to give hope. Only 10 minutes of time on ice for Josh Doan tonight. The least amount for Utah tonight. Carcone scratched tonight. Bukestad back eventually. If that will be the norm, I'd rather him be in Tucson. And that's a discussion for sure. And I want to ask that to Craig when Craig gets on, because it's something we talked about in our show last week, is how they're going to shuffle the lines around. And if Josh Doan is going to make the lineup, is he going to make the team? Is he going to get sent down? It's something that I'm not sure yet. Because I know Michael Carcone, one of the things he can do, he provide goals. He provides offense. Josh Doan's a player that right now should be providing 200-foot game, but it's an experiment. And the luxury that they have in Utah is they can send Josh Doan, and he does not Josh Doan down, or he doesn't have to clear waivers. So this may last. This may last a game. This may last 10 games. We'll have to see. And I think the lines will stay like this until you see big step back lineup. Rudo from DNVR. Thanks for jumping in, Rudo. As you can see, all by myself. Rudo has a show with like 5 people on it, and I've got a show with like 1. Thoughts on Durzi standing up for Keller, overreacting or setting the tone for a new franchise? Well, it starts with Keller. Keller takes the initial for pulling the lid off of Murphy. Murphy and Keller, they played together. Like, I don't think that was going to come to much. That could have been worse. Like, Durzi can get the third man in. Durzi could have get kicked out. Durzi could be gone for the rest of the night. And again, I'm not a guy that wants to take penalties, but I do think you need to set the tone for your captain in opening night in your home building. Later in the season, that penalty is going to drive me nuts. I don't like to see people jumping in, and you're going to see it from, I know he's your favorite, Utah. I know Liam O'Brien's your favorite. I know. Liam O'Brien's going to be that guy, and he's going to jump in, and he's going to take too many penalties, and it's going to cost this team games at times. So, they got lucky that they only had to take the extra 2 minutes. And right now, I'm all for setting the tone that you're protecting your captain, protecting your star players inside your home building. I'm okay with it. But as the season progresses, the guys like McBain and O'Brien will take care of that stuff just by being on the ice. So we'll see as this season progresses. Penalties have always been a problem for this team, but killing all of the Chicago's 3 power plays, then again, Chicago really struggled with the man advantage. So I do think if you're able to kill those penalties and the opposing team does not have their power play buzzing, you can afford to take those penalties. You cannot do that against the Edmonton Oilers, or you're going to be in huge trouble. Some other players I want to talk about. Another player, and I think defensively, we talked about what Durzi can bring to this team. And I think last year you looked for Sean Durzi to be the guy all the time. He was the guy offensively because they didn't have a guy like Mikhail Sergachev in the lineup. Now I think Durzi has an opportunity. And I do think those lines, you're going to see the defensive pairs continue to shuffle a little bit too, because I do think you're going to see, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Durzi drop down to that second period and you see Yusuf Valimaki. Valimaki plays 18 minutes tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him playing more minutes. And I think you see Durzi in a secondary role, not playing all that ice time with Sergachev. But one defenseman I thought really surprised me, and I think it showed up on that goal, is Michael Kesselring. And last season, in his rookie year, a guy that I didn't expect to make the team and play in the NHL last season, is a guy that really has taken a step forward physically. I think he's taken a step forward offensively. He's a guy that can jump up in the play, and you saw it on the goal. His ability to get up the ice with speed and pace at his size, he is going to be a special player. And you talk about this young core up front, Michael Kesselring is part of that young core on the back end. And I think he's an unbelievable, exciting player on the back end. And I again, it's when you look at this team going through a rebuild, they've finally turned the corner. They've turned the corner where you can start to see that there's hope up front. They have the ability to score. You see the back end. And I know I've been harping on their defensive zone structure tonight, but that will come because you've got experienced guys like Ian Cole, and you've got Mikhail Sergachev back there, and they've got Marino coming. And I think Marino is going to be a guy that's really going to change how these pairs work, because Marino is going to be the guy that's going to get those penalty kill minutes. He's going to get those defensive zone starts, and he's going to be the guy that's going to lock it down in the defensive zone. So he's absolutely going to help in that end. Nathan Rudo, again, Kesselring was Utah's best possession D-man tonight. See, now, Rudo, I don't know if you're doing that statistically. Like, I don't know if you have analytics. I'm not a big analytics guy, and we'll get into that as the season progresses. My love of analytics, or the lack thereof of analytics and possession and all of those things. But Michael Kesselring is a guy that definitely is going to continue to improve, and he's going to be a guy that you're going to see drive from the right side of the defense, and he's going to be a guy that can help carry that offense. Well, we're going to get a little bit more, and hopefully Craig gets to join us soon on the other side of this quick break. FOCO is the leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise and a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and so much more. the best officially licensed gear for all sports and all fandoms, whether it's hoodies, jackets, beachwear, or as I like to say, Craig's favorite, the overalls. You might see him at a Utah Utes game, no shirt and overalls. There's something for fans for almost every occasion. Get all your Utah Jazz gear and your Utah Utes gear and merch. We're still waiting for the Utah Hockey Club gear to get in at FOCO, but it's coming soon. So FOCO always has your back for sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by visiting FOCO.com and using code ALLCITY10 for all non-presale items. Use the promo code ALLCITY10 for 10% off. And for all you outdoor enthusiasts in the Utah area, make sure you get Rugged Road. Rugged Road is dedicated to creating durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Whether you're on land or on the water, Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. Rugged Road coolers are designed to always float upright, so you never lose a drink. Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport on any trip. The coolers are guaranteed to keep their contents cool for up to 7 days. By the way, I'm not leaving home for 7 days. It's not happening. Sorry. I can keep my beers cool in my Rugged Road cooler in the driveway, but that's a whole different story. Great for everything from fishing to tubing to camping and tailgating. These coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor or sports enthusiast. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers, reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use code ALLCITY for 10% off. That's ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use the code ALLCITY for 10% off. Well, I'm going to ask our producer, Emma, and I know she's not big on joining the show. Emma, have you heard from Craig?
Yeah, he just wrapped up with Andre Turney, so I'm hoping that he's joining soon.
Oh, okay. Well, Rudo, I don't know if you've ever had to do this, Rudo, but this we're going to do our best. Craig, I was supposed to ask Craig his initial thoughts now, and we're going to talk about the building. But since we can't do that, we're going to break down some of the lines that this team had out there tonight and what I think going forward. And one of those things starts when we talked about Josh Doan. And Josh Doan between Krause and Michelli. Krause and Michelli a year ago between Nick Bukestad was a line you could rely on for this team. It was a line that could play in the offensive side, give you a spark. It's a line that could play physical because Krause and Bukestad knew how to play that side of the game as well. But most importantly, they could play on the defensive side of the puck and really lock things down when they needed to be. I didn't feel that tonight. I didn't feel that Michelli Krause spark that we're so used to seeing from the years past. I know Krause gets a goal late, but I think that I'm not surprised. You looked at what Josh Doan brings to that line. And last year, Josh Doan played a lot on the wing, and they're asking a lot for Josh Doan to play in the middle of the ice right now. And again, it's all with the injury to Nick Bukestad. I'd be surprised to see him playing a lot in the middle of the ice over the next few days. I think you will see a player like Kerfoot that you saw in the bottom of the lineup getting an opportunity to play in the middle of the ice. I think Kerfoot can bring you that little bit more of a jump, a little bit more speed to that line. But I ultimately think Kerfoot's another guy that could play with Cooley and Guenther. And I know McBain was there to bring some strength and some grit and some fighting and some toughness to that line. But I do think over time, when that line needs to get up and go, I think you're going to look for a player like Alex Kerfoot, another guy that I didn't notice as much tonight as I usually do. Kerfoot's a guy that you can play up and down the lineup. He's a jack of all trades. He can play on the top line with this team, and he can play at the bottom of your lineup too. He's an experienced NHLer that does everything the right way, and I do think he's going to get an opportunity to be utilized more in this lineup than he was tonight. I do think you're going to see him move up and down the lineup because I do think that Krause-Michelli line didn't have that offensive spark that we're used to. I don't think you saw the playmaking from Michelli. I don't think you saw them distributing the puck like they're accustomed to. And I know it's partly because of Josh Doan in the middle of the ice that it hasn't played a lot of that position with those guys. So again, wouldn't be surprised if you see someone come into the lineup, especially on the upcoming road trip. You're going to see Michael Carcone get ice time. I mean, he's a 20-goal scorer in the National Hockey League. Michael Carcone is going to get ice time. And that's one of the things that I find curious right now about them carrying 14 forwards, because you are seeing Kyler Yamamoto, who they just signed, who led their team in scoring over the preseason, sitting out of the lineup tonight. And he's another guy that brings a little bit of experience that can give you that offensive jump. So I don't think players can have the ability to take a night off on this Utah forward group, because if you do, next man's up. and the next guy's knocking on the door ready to get into that lineup. So I do think that they have some options, and I know you're going to see those guys jump into the lineup as this team heads out onto the East Coast. It's a grueling East Coast road trip that's coming, and I do think you're going to have guys that have the ability to jump in and out of that lineup. And when Nick Bukestad comes, for people that are new to this show, I tell you what, Bukestad's one of my favorite players, and not just because he's from Minnesota, where I'm from. And he is that too. He's from Minnesota, but Nick Bukestad is a guy that you're going to like. Nick Bukestad's a guy that you like because he not just plays the right way, he does everything the right way. He's a great guy off the ice. He's great in the community, and on the ice, he knows how to play. He's incredibly experienced. He's a top draft pick. He's a first-round draft pick of the Florida Panthers, so he knows how to play the game offensively. But over time, he's learned to be a defensive player. He can win faceoffs. He can play in any situation, and he's going to bring this team. If you need a guy to hold the lead, Nick Bukestad's on the ice. If you need a guy to change it up, Nick Bukestad jumping on the ice. And right now, with him being injured on a week-to-week basis, it's definitely going to take a toll. And you need to get him back in the middle of the ice for this team. And I think once you see him come in, you're going to see where these lines are really going to shake out. I think there's going to be a lot of experimenting over the first few weeks, but I think that's finally going to settle down when you're able to get Nick Bukestad back into the lineup. Craig trying to record interviews. Craig is not tech friendly. I don't know if he got the interviews. I don't know. He was trying to get interviews for the show down in the postgame locker room, getting some audio with Bear and some of the players, and I'm just not quite sure that happened. So I think that's one of the lines that could see some jumbling. And again, with that fourth line, I think Stenlund and O'Brien are solid on the fourth line. I think they bring exactly that fourth line energy that you want to see from a fourth line. I think they're able to hit, but surprisingly with Stenlund and O'Brien, they got a little giddy up in their game. And I do think that they're a fourth line that Bear, obviously, Andre Tourigny feels safe with because he's able to throw them out in defensive zone faceoffs late in the game. And for him to be able to put a fourth line out, that's incredible trust on a player. And I know he really, really likes Liam O'Brien and what he brings to this team. And so Andre Tourigny is going to feel like he can get him out in any situation. But I talked about Kerfoot on the right side on that line right now. And I do think there might be better options, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see a player like Josh Doan, and the next game, maybe he slots in on the wing on that line. And maybe he's a guy that can distribute the puck to those guys a little bit and move Kerfoot into the middle between Krause and Michelli to see if he gives them a little bit of a spark. But again, here I am shuffling lines on a team that goes out and wins their first game convincingly against the Chicago Blackhawks 5-2. And I think that a little bit of everything. You saw some fisticuffs. You saw some helmets off, some gloves off. I'm not sure if where this team is going to finish in the fighting. I know Liam O'Brien was one of the NHL leaders in major penalties a season ago. I'd like to see him tone that down a little bit. I don't know if the fans in Utah would, but I would. But I think that you can be excited if you're a Utah fan right now. That start was incredible. That crowd after that first goal goes in, and we all were trying to guess back here at the All-City Network who is going to get that first goal of the game. Was it going to be Josh Doan? We kind of felt it was going to be Josh Doan because that's how the story should have been written, in the fairy tale story of the franchise moving and his dad running the franchise and being the franchise hero of the previous franchise. And now Josh, in the franchise's new birth, a new beginning, he becomes the guy here and he gets the first franchise goal in history. But alas, it was Dylan Guenther. And as I said, I think those three, along with Josh Doan, are going to be guys you're going to see for a very long time leading this team. And I think it's comfortable to know as a Utah fan that you've locked Dylan Guenther up for 8 years, 8 seasons. Now, I've talked a lot about how I do not like long-term contracts. He's a kid. He's a kid. If you can lock Logan Cooley up a year from now and you've got Cooley and Guenther locked up for the next 7 or 8 years, boy, howdy, you start planning the parade route because this team is getting the foundation built and they're building it the right way. And I will say Karen hit a nail on the head about the East Coast road trip that is coming up. It's good for Petey because the start times are early. And I don't know, someone needs to jump in and tell me when the whole time zone thing changes, because I don't know that. I know it's sometime in November, but without Leah here to tell me when things happen, I just don't know. And thanks, Rudo. You're right. Time to fill, trying to stretch, because Craig was supposed to be here.
It's
Yes.
November 3rd, bud.
It is?
I'm pretty
And
sure
it
it's
was,
November 3rd.
see, now how was I supposed to know that, Emma? Emma, do we know if Craig's going to come on the show tonight?
I'm really hoping. He said he's walking up to set up, so I'm really hoping.
Well, hey, let's hope so. Let's hope so. So, since we're sitting there talking about, I do want to talk about their upcoming road trip. And this was I'm glad they got this one out of the way at home. I do think the nerves were there. I think the nerves were for the families. I think they were there for the fans, clearly. And I know they were there for the staff and the players. This getting the locker rooms up and running in the Delta Center in 4 months was a Herculean task. Getting the ice ready to play a game in 4 months. Absolutely an amazing feat. And I got to say something I heard on the ESPN broadcast tonight, that they talked about the staff coming and how great it was that GM Bill Armstrong was able to bring most of his staff along with him, and the hockey ops department all came with, and how exciting it was, all but Stan Wilson, the longtime equipment manager. And buddy, long time. Stan Wilson came from the Winnipeg Jets. He's been around this franchise forever. And they said he retired. Stan did not retire. Stan's still there. Stan is just no longer the head equipment guy for the Utah Hockey Club. That is Tony Silva, who did an outstanding job. His first game as head equipment manager in the NHL was tonight. So congratulations to Tony Silva. I'm sure he's listening. No, he's not. He's packing gear and getting ready to hit the road. But Stan Wilson is still a part of this organization. He is just no longer the head equipment guy. And one of his tasks is to get everything set up in the new practice facility. It is to get up the locker room set up at the Oval, and it is to get the locker room set up in NHL standard at the Delta Center. And I have to say, with the help of Bill Armstrong and Ryan Smith and everything that Stan Wilson did, everything went according to plan, and they miraculously pulled it off. I mean, it's amazing to think what they were able to pull off in just a few short months. But now they get to go on the road, and I think it's good for a lot of reasons. I think for this team to get this off their back and get their home opener done, I think that's huge. And I think it's great for the families. But now they hit the road, and they'll get on the road tomorrow. They'll fly tomorrow morning. They're going to fly early tomorrow because you're going to the East Coast, and then they're going to play on Thursday against the New York Islanders. And the New York Islanders are a tough team. They're a tough team for this Utah franchise in the way they play and the style of play. The New York Islanders can almost lull you to sleep. It can be a boring game at times, but it's going to be a true test for Utah. One, it's incredibly difficult to travel from west to east, different time zones, because your body, you get up early in the morning, at least what you think is early. You have to get up at 7 in the morning East Coast time. That's 5 o'clock body time, and you're tired. And they just got done playing tonight, and all the emotions of tonight, and they have to get on a plane tomorrow. This is tough. That Thursday game is going to be a real true test to see how this team can respond to a little bit of adversity early in the season, because I think they're going to play a very good team, and I think they're going to play a very good team, and I think they're going to be tired, and that's going to be hard. And no rest for the weary, because 2 days later they play the New York Rangers, and the New York Rangers are one of the teams that I have picked to be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. And I think the New York Rangers have all of the pieces that they've had for years. And this team has to play in Madison Square Garden. And then 2 days later, they have to play the New Jersey Devils in a matinee game. And the Devils were a disappointment last season. And they're a team that clearly thought they were going to make playoffs a year ago, and they didn't. They've retooled. They're stronger. They're better. I think they have the best 6 defensemen in the National Hockey League. And that is a really hard building to play in. That is going to be a tough day on a matinee game. And then why don't you travel all the way across the country? How about that for 2 games? Play New Jersey, and then 2 days later on a Wednesday, why don't you play in Anaheim? Oh yeah, that makes sense. I don't think the NHL scheduling department has done any favors to the Utah Hockey Club playing consecutive games on the road to end the road trip in Anaheim. So you're going to look at a team that's playing 4 games in 7 nights on the road all the way from the East Coast, finishing up on the West Coast. But it is going to give this team a chance to bond. It's going to give this team a chance to be in hotel rooms, do team meals, and get together. They're going to have more practice time because of the day in between each of those games. I think this road trip is going to be incredibly valuable. Now, don't judge too much by wins and losses on this road trip. Andre Tourigny is going to do that. GM Bill Armstrong is going to do that. But the fan base, you don't need to do that yet. This road trip is about playing the kind of hockey that they need to play. They can't give up the chances they gave tonight, but you're going to see Karel Vejmelka is going to get an opportunity to play on the road. You're going to see what he been able to turn his game around and bring something this season that he didn't have a year ago and get some consistency back in his game. You're going to see how this team plays against some of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. So I think it's going to be a really good test to see what this team can do against some of the better teams in the league. And I think you're going to see players like Cooley and Guenther. What are they going to play like when they have a little bit more attention to them? And I think as this season goes on, you're going to see both those guys get a lot of attention because you could see it in the building. Like Cooley is just an exciting player. And right now, I don't want to say under the radar because he was a big rookie. He was a big time rookie. Guys knew who Cooley was. But when you start to see some of the things that he and Guenther are going to do together, well, it's going to be interesting because teams are going to have to put their checking line out against either Schmaltz and Keller, or they're going to have to pull them out against Guenther and Cooley. Somebody is not getting the top checking unit of the opponents, and that's something this franchise hasn't had in a while is offensive zone depth. They haven't had the opportunity to play different players at those positions and be able to take some of the traffic away. You look at Keller, he's been the guy. Keller's been the guy who's been taking all of that heat from the opponent's top defenders and top defensemen for years. And now finally you've got some other players that can distribute that and are going to get opportunities, because if you want to stay on Keller and you want to throw out your best checkers over the boards when Keller's on the ice, well, guess what? Guenther and Cooley are coming next. And I think that this is going to be a good 1-2 punch that this team just hasn't had for an incredibly long time. I think Craig was here, and I don't know if they're serving hot dogs in the press room, but Craig was here and then he left. I don't know. Maybe he thought the show was going so well that he'd leave me out here to dry. Yeah, and one of the other things, and somebody, oh my God, say it isn't so. Guys. No, it's fantastic. What do you mean, Craig?
No, this setup is brutal, Petey. It's brutal.
It looks good. It looks good, and you sound good. That's all I need. I need to take a breath here, Craig. First of all, welcome to the All Utah Hockey Podcast, first post-game edition. Craig, initial thoughts of the game in Utah, and not just the game. The atmosphere.
The atmosphere was unbelievable here. I'm gonna tilt this. Sorry, technical difficulties all over the place in this arena tonight. But the setup, Petey, it's gonna need some work here. But the atmosphere was phenomenal. This crowd clearly embraced this team from the get-go. This building is really loud. They are all behind this team. I know it's the first game, so take it all with a grain of salt. We had great atmosphere at America West Arena in 1996, but this was a special atmosphere tonight. This was a special game to get to cover. Of course, it was a little painful coming from Arizona as well, but they really turned out tonight for this team.
Yeah, did you see all the stuff going on before the game outside? Like, this was a huge event, not just inside and outside. I think they could have jammed another 5,000 people in there if they would have had the opportunity. How was it after the first goal, Craig? When you see Dylan Guenther put it up, what was the building like when that goal went in?
It just erupted. Yeah, it erupted. And I don't think the energy level really dropped for most of this game, Petey. They sustained it. And again, it's the first game, but man, that's exactly the welcome that you want. They got a little shaky toward the end. You and I were texting about the way they were defending. It brought back old memories.
I know.
But they held on for the win, right? And in some ways, I felt like the Chicago Blackhawks were the perfect patsy for this first game, right?
Yeah, I said the same thing. Luckily, they got the win. I think Chicago is going to be better. I think their veteran players are going to help this team be better. I still don't think it's a great hockey team, and I think they got the right team at the right time on the right night for the Utah Hockey Club to have an event like they did today.
Yeah, it's a bad team, right? The Chicago Blackhawks are a bad team, but they have a star. They can attract fans, not that they were going to need it anyway tonight. So it was almost the perfect draw. Put the Blackhawks in there. Yeah, just like they do with the Winter Classic every other year with the Blackhawks. Just a few things from the postgame. The locker's pretty sweet, actually, Petey. The dressing room's pretty sweet.
Really?
It's a little tight. It's a little tight. I will say that. It feels a little small, but they've got this nice ribbon board, recessed ceiling. It has Utah hockey on the ribbon board, the emblems on a puck on the ceiling. They did some things well
Wow.
here. Yeah, and I keep saying this. They haven't had much time to get anything done. I marvel
Yeah.
at what they've accomplished in 5.5 months because it is such a short period of time to hope to get an NHL team up and running. So hats off to Ryan and Ashley Smith, and obviously a lot of people that are doing work here, a lot of staff that
Right.
are getting things done to get this thing ready for tonight. I thought they put on a pretty good show.
Yeah, well, we talked about that. Gave hats off to Stan, two little stick taps to Stan Wilson, and getting some of these done. But let's talk some of the players. We talked about Dylan Guenther and his 2 goals. I know one's an empty netter. What did you think of the young kids tonight? The Guenther, Cooley, McBain line.
I thought it was good. I mean, listen, Dylan Guenther, we all see the shot. We all see the speed and the scoring ability. But Andre reiterated again in the interview room tonight. He's a complete player. That's why Dylan Guenther's on the ice a lot. He has really refined his game to where he can trust him in all three zones. We've talked a lot about having to go back to juniors, having to go back to the World Championship, having to go back to the AHL. And each time he went back, he refined his game even more. You and I have talked about this when he went to the A last year, and the guy that came back up a couple months later was not the same guy. He is a
Yeah.
terrific player. They should get really excited about this kid, and they should get really excited about that pairing. We'll see if Jack McBain sticks, right? As time goes on, as Bukestad comes back, as injuries occur, we'll see how they juggle the line. But I have a feeling those two guys are going to be playing together for a long time because they both bring speed and they just complement each other so well with their games.
Who else did you get a chance to talk to besides head coach?
We talked to Clayton. Clayton actually predicted that Dylan Guenther was going to score the first goal. He didn't give us the greatest of answers why. He just thought he was a great shooter. So I think he had him on the parlay there. But we talked to Connor Ingram as well, and Connor Ingram was stunned at the amount of media in the dressing room. You know how Connor Ingram is, Petey. He loves to talk to
Yeah.
media. No,
Oh,
he doesn't.
bad.
No,
No, he does
no,
not.
he doesn't at all. So
No.
when he saw this just crowd gathering around him, I thought he was going to lose it for a minute. But he's his usual self, right? Once he gets into one of those settings, he's incredible to talk to. I gotta say this, and I know we've been saying it a lot. I'm just so happy for these guys that they're having the sort of the level of support and everything that they lacked in Arizona, they're getting here. I talked to somebody on the staff today who said, we keep asking for things, and so far they haven't said no. So that's a really nice, a welcome thing for this group of guys who have been through so much over the past few seasons.
Yeah, and I think you could see it. I think you could see it in the way they played and the way they approached this game today. And you talked about Connor Ingram. Here's a guy that, without Connor Ingram's sharp play, made 24 saves over the last 2 periods. Like that is going to have to get better, or he is going to have to be amazing night in and night out, like he was last year. He's going to have to be an all-star performer if the team's going to win games. They can't play like that in front of Connor Ingram. How was Clayton Keller with the media today? I know now he's the captain. He's the face. Like he has been the face for a few years, but now he's got to do these interviews. Like, good.
Yeah, I mean, he was fine. He fielded them all. I'll be honest. A lot of the questions tonight were, hey, how was it to be out there in the first game? And it was up that tenure. There's only so many ways you can answer that question,
Sure.
honestly. There were a lot of sort of softball thumbsucker questions tonight, but you expect that from a first game. So we'll see how he goes. But he was there. He was joking with the media. He was handling. I think he understood his role and what he had to do because it was a fairly lengthy interview in the room with him.
One other play I wanted to ask you about was Josh Doan. He's a guy that didn't get as much ice time as some of the other forwards on this lineup. And you and I talked about it on last week's show. We wondered if he was even going to make the team, or was he going to end up starting the season in Tucson. What did you think of his performance tonight? And did you get a chance to ask Andre about it?
No, we didn't talk about Josh so much in the post game. Again, a lot of the questions, as you can imagine from local media, were just about the vibe and the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I thought Josh was a little quiet tonight, but I mean, it was a game where you wouldn't say, okay, there were any glaring weaknesses in his game. I just thought he had a quiet game, a defensive role tonight, a very simple game tonight. I did see him walking in the hallway with Pops, the two Doans together, talk to them briefly. I am curious how they handle this, Petey, going forward. You and I both know, look, if Nick Bukestad's not back for, a few more weeks, there could be another injury up front by then. But if there's not, and you have this full complement of forwards, what do you do? You got to make a decision there on who stays and who goes, and it's not an easy decision. Keller Yamamoto was out of the lineup tonight, but I expect him to be back in the lineup. I think they just had to put Liam O'Brien in the lineup tonight because the home crowd is just in love with this guy. But you're going to see Yamamoto get in. He really impressed in the preseason. They're going to have a decision to make at some point soon.
Yeah, and I think Carcone's going to get his chances too. He's a guy that can score in this league, and he's shown he can score. So you've got, when Bustad gets healthy, you have a complete extra line sitting out of it. You can't do it. Like, you can't. There's not that many spots in the roster. Somebody's going to have to go, and we're just curious to see who it is going to be. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be trial by fire. I think guys are going to get in and out of this lineup on this Eastern road trip, and whoever's playing the best over this next 2 or 3 weeks is probably going to stay, and who is not might be the odd man out and heading to Tucson. Craig, what do you think about this upcoming road trip? Are there concerns? I know they're going to the island. You got the Rangers, you got the Devils.
I don't know. I think Andre is actually looking forward to this, and you probably remember this as a coach. Hey, sir, I'm adjusting the camera. You're all hating this on me, but I'm getting more comfortable here in this crazy press box. This
don't worry, no one's
vibes,
here,
by
Greg.
the way, Petey.
You got
vibes.
It does. Once you saw that whole side, that's what reminded me of the old data. But I did look impressive. It did look impressive with the fans there, the full building. But did you talk to Andre about the road trip?
Yeah, we talked to him about it, and he likes the idea of getting out on the road and bonding. It's that old thing that coaches like to get away early and get the group together where they're away from all the distractions of home. And certainly there have been a lot of distractions in Salt Lake City. I mean, Clayton Keller said it himself that at some point you just get sick answering the question, so you're happy that you're past it. But now they can get away from all this, just go back to the normal routine and play the game. And I think that's probably a good situation for them. You know, the New York setup too, it's pretty simple. Yeah, I mean, you got to move between locations a little bit, but it's not all that daunting to travel between those 3 games, at least in the New York area. So it's probably a good situation for them to get to settle in and just get to know each other a little bit.
Yeah, and they'll get a chance to practice. You got a day off in between each game. Either you're going to rest or have good morning skate. So I do think it's a chance for these guys to get together. And you're right. The media will be, hey, let's face it, the media is going to be on these guys every time, the first time in the city. Madison Square Garden, it's Utah's coming to town. It's going to be that way. It was that way with Seattle when they came to the league 4 years ago. Utah's going to face that same excitement over the next few weeks, but that eventually will die down and they can just go play hockey. And I think what you saw from this team tonight, they're young, skilled, their young talent is going to be incredibly exciting. Clayton Keller's young. Like, we talk about him as the big veteran. Clayton Keller is a young kid still. This team offensively was really exciting to watch. Any other thoughts, Craig, from tonight's game?
I just from an Arizona perspective, I got to say this. It's tough, right? I saw a lot of Coyotes jerseys walking around tonight, Petey. There were a lot of people that I'm sure were either they're converts or they just wanted to get one last look at the team. So that was tough. But the thing that I'm trying to come back to over and over again is, again, the team's in a much better place. They're getting all the support they wanted. And when you sat in this crowd tonight and you felt the energy of the newness of it all, right? A fan base that's just excited to have NHL hockey. It almost made you fall in love with the game again. It was a really cool thing to be a part of that, to really understand what it means to be a fan. Everything was fresh tonight. There was no baggage from the past, none of that. This was just a fan base really excited about its brand new team. So I'm kind of glad that I came. I'm glad I'm a part of this, even though, you know, we can talk about all that other stuff later, but there was some great energy in this building. This fan base, I think, is going to turn out really well for this team. They have a bright future here. They've got all the pieces in place, and eventually they'll get this arena fixed too. Well,
Craig, I know at the heart of all of this, you are still a writer. And do you have any stories coming up that we can be looking forward to on the All Utah Hockey Podcast?
Yeah, I have one coming for the Utah audience off this game. Actually, I wrote a column off this game, just really more like a letter to Utah fans, and I won't give any more away, but that will be up shortly. Most of it's written, so.
Yeah, but you know what, Craig? I'll tell you this. We air some dirty laundry right here. So part of what happens on this show is we need to come up with some written content before we go on air. It's called the headline and description. Craig's the writer. Craig was busy. I tried to do it. I can't write. Craig, I can't spell. I'm not a good writer. It was a disaster. And thank goodness for our old friend Leah Merrill jumping in at the last minute and saying that's Petey, that's not very good. And she
Petey?
saved the day.
Petey,
Can't write.
I wish I had you here tonight for all the tech issues that I had in this arena.
Oh, yeah. See, that
You
I
really
can
could have
handle.
helped me there.
I can't write, but I can plug one chord into another. I'm really good. Like that's the guy. That's my thing. Like you could lean on PD for that. But anyway,
Yeah.
Craig, I'm really glad you got the opportunity to be there. I think we could see the excitement through the TV, but to be there must have sent chills. And I know this Utah, the city, the fan base, the ownership group, everybody involved, get a huge, congratulations for getting this thing pulled off in 4 short months. And Gary Bettman and Gary Bettman didn't get booed. Like
Yeah.
that's unusual. I don't know
He
if he knew
did
he was
point
in the
out
right building.
somehow he filtered out all the cheers and said, "I did hear a few boos." So somehow he heard him
Did
in the crowd.
he? Yeah,
We talked to him, yeah.
and he was sitting on the
Yeah.
glass. I usually don't see Gary Bettman sitting on the
He got
glass.
cheered.
Look at
He got cheered.
unbel-
The other thing that was great about this, like you probably saw it at Sunrise when the game started. Ryan and Ashley Smith were on the ice addressing
Yeah.
the fan base. It was such a nice touch, right? That's
Yeah.
the way it's supposed to look. A public-facing ownership group that understands that they're a part of this community. They need to win this community over, and they need to be accountable to this community. That's what ownership looks like. And from everyone that I have talked to so far, they are delivering on every promise that they've made. That's a really good sign for this franchise moving forward. Stable ownership is one of those pillars, one of those keys that you have to have a successful franchise.
Craig, I'm going to blow this name because I'm not good at names. So who dropped the puck tonight? Do you know who dropped the puck?
Laurie
tonight?
Markkinen. Oh yeah, Laurie Markkinen was out there.
Laurie Markkinen from the Jazz. Also U of A. I just want to throw out U of A.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I will say
Yeah,
this,
Leah both.
Craig. I will say this: he could skate. Like he actually could. And I was thinking maybe suit him up. Like if you want another big defender at the back end, can he suit up and he can't defend.
Well, I got a little scouting report for you on Laurie Markkinen because apparently Clayton Keller told him before he went out, "Hey, don't fall," because apparently in the rehearsal he did in fact fall. So props to Laurie Markkinen for delivering tonight. He looked pretty fluid out there actually.
Laurie
I thought he looked
Markkinen.
impressive and yeah. So
yeah, he did. He skated. Honestly,
showed up.
we've seen other athletes try to cross over into that sport. It could be a challenge, and he was outstanding. Craig, any final thoughts before you sign off? And now you've been the full tour. You've done the California tour. Now you're in Utah. Hopefully you get to come home soon. And any final thoughts? Any final thoughts?
I'm just, I'm looking forward to seeing what this team can accomplish this season. You and I both know the holes here. We know the timeline. Bill Armstrong has spelled it out very well. Caution flags, right? Don't assume that this team is just going to jump right into the playoffs. But you watch some of their exciting players maturing. When you watch Logan Cooley and Dylan Guenther, you think, okay, these guys could take a step forward, and that could mean a lot to this team. Clayton Keller's going to be who he is. You've got Mikhail Sergachev on the blue line as well. I think the goal for this team should be just to be around the playoff push right at the end of the season, right? You want to be playing, as they say, meaningful games toward the end of the season. That's a really good goal for this team, in my opinion. And with the energy that they're going to get from this fan base and from this city and this, just the newness of it all, they just might be able to do it.
Yeah, and again, the fans need to temper their expectations. I think today is a great way to start off this franchise, and I think it was a huge win. I think they did a lot of things right today. But they're going to lose some hockey games, and I don't know if they're hanging the banner in the Delta Center quite yet, but there are some really good things happening, and there's some really good players, not just here in Utah, but in Tucson, in juniors, over in Russia right now. There are players all over the world that eventually are going to play for this roster and really help this team. I tell you what, you can see the seeds being planted right now and where this future is going. So, again, what a way to start. It's exciting to watch on TV, and I'm glad you got to experience it firsthand, Craig. A little FOMO living through you.
Yeah, one more shout-out before we it sounds like you want to take me out of here, Petey. And I would appreciate that as a right.
Buddy, it's midnight in Utah.
I get that. But one guy, I don't know if you talked about him before I got here, but Barrett Hayton was really good tonight. He might have been the best forward on the ice tonight. I'll tell you what, buddy, if he turns into a top 6 center after all this, if Barrett Hayton actually realizes that promise, that would be something, huh? That would change the trajectory of this franchise as well if Barrett Hayton finally figures it out, finally stays healthy long enough to figure it out.
Yeah, Big J from the CHGO show said, "Good game, y'all. Great atmosphere tonight." Was Jay there? Did they have CHGO
Yeah, the
representation
CHGO
there?
guys were here. Yeah, they're up in the
What the?
nosebleeds though.
Where's that budget? Like, I didn't get that invite. But you're right, Craig. I one of the things with Barrett Hayton that surprised me is I thought and I didn't see him walking around, but he looked thinner today because he looked quicker. He looked faster than he has on his feet in a while. And I remember that one year he went away and he got bigger. And the problem with when Barrett Hayton went and got bigger, he got slower. And I think he goes, oh, maybe that isn't the key to my game. Maybe I need to get back to the player I was when I got here. And I think that's what he looked like tonight. He looked like he had some jump in his step, looked like he could skate. He stays healthy. He makes that line click. Like he just does. His ability gets in that gives Schmaltz and Keller more room. It is a good line. And you're right. I think I've always said this: you can win with players like Barrett Hayton on your roster. You can. I just don't know if you can win with them as your 1C. But that's me for another day.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about that for 25 years, so we can definitely save that for another day. But
exactly,
it would just be good to see him, get to a point. Again, stay healthy first of all, right? You just want to see the guy on the ice because Barrett Hayton cares. Barrett Hayton dedicates himself in the offseason. I know that. I just want to see him get some time where he can play consistently and maybe find that rhythm. I don't know if he's going to be a number one center, but if he can turn in performances like tonight fairly consistently, that'll go a long way toward helping this team improve because he was really good tonight.
I agree, Craig. I agree. And I'm glad you were there to see all of it firsthand. Get home. We all miss you here. Get home.
No, you
travel
don't.
safe.
No, you don't.
No, I really don't. I was kind of hoping you didn't show up today. No, that's not true. Hey, if you're in here, make sure you hit that like button. Get all of Craig's written content at allcitynetwork.com. Follow the show on Twitter at @all_Utah Hockey. You can follow Craig at Craig S. Morgan. Follow me at S. Peters Hockey. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the content that we put out here at the All Utah Hockey Podcast. And listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And please subscribe for Craig Morgan, for Petey, and for Emma behind the back. Thanks for joining us on the Utah Hockey Club's first win in franchise history, 5-2 over the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll see you next time. And until then, we'll see you at the rink.
We all silly like the mayor.